everyone, and welcome to another episode of Palm Wine Central Podcast in collab with Stuck in the Middle Podcast, where we deep dive into books that inspire, challenge, and transform our lives. I'm AK, your host, and with me I got Therese, my other host, Manet, Nora, and Barbara. Together, we are the host of this book club things, you know what I mean? Of course, I'll have a chance to introduce himself, but for that, in this episode, we'll explore the transformative book Boundaries, which, again, shout out to Manet. She brought this big, long book for us to read that we're going to jump into. But Boundaries, when to say yes, when to say no, to take control of your life, by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. Is it Townsend?
Townsend.
Townsend. Oh, okay. Townsend. AKA the name butcher. Anyways, bear with me. This book is a powerful guide to understand personal boundaries. Those invisible lines that define what is ours and what's not. It offers practical advice on how to set limits in various aspects of life, from relationships to work. We chose this book because boundaries have to be a game changer in our own lives. Learning to say no has helped us to prioritize our well-being and improve our relationships. Manet, I know that's like like a generalized thing for everybody, but really, you brought this book to us. It's a really lengthy book again, but very, very inspiring. From them using Christian biblical quotes to explain real life scenarios, put everything together. So what made you pick this book, and all of that stuff?
So what made me pick the book is that I have, in my adulthood, most especially, I have struggled with not really setting boundaries, but the kickback on setting boundaries, especially in the African community. What I've typically heard is that boundaries is not a Christian thing. You're supposed to be forgiving, and so there is this whole misconception that because you have boundaries, you're not forgiving, or you're not compassionate, or you're not loving or accepting. So I've been in many friendships or relationships where if I said I did not want to do something, it was seen as not going with a gang. Like, for example, a group wants to go see a movie, and I'm like, oh, you guys can go ahead because the day doesn't work for me, or the movie, I'm not really into it. And then, okay, so what day would work for you, and what movie would you like? And I would say, no, if whatever the majority decides, if it doesn't work for me, I don't mind staying out. So I've had situations like, well, you're not a team player, that's the word, yeah, that. And even, in family relationships where you say you don't really want to do something, and then you're considered the recalcitrant child. So I felt like it was a good book it was a long book, yeah, but I also felt like the longer books get, it starts to feel like it's redundant. But it was worth the read, especially because it gives you biblical concepts in which I feel like a lot of us, especially in the African community, could read, learn, and share. And because not everybody's into reading, and the few people who are willing to read and learn, can learn to practice some of the skills, and then it can spill over, and like a ripple effect. Eventually, a group of people will learn from those who have learned skills. So yeah, that's why I suggested the book.
For somebody who didn't have something to say, you sure did have a lot to say. You know what I mean? But anyways, the authors, they define boundaries as invisible property lines that help distinguish personal responsibilities and sense of self from others. Therese and Nora, what are boundaries? Well, other than to you guys, what are boundaries other than from that, from that definition, and why they're important in our lives?
I think the definition makes sense. I never really thought about it as far as like property, but now that I own a home, I definitely I can relate to that part because my neighbor, literally the house right beside me, they have a car that doesn't work and it's parked in front of their house. And I think they're renting. So that car is probably not going to move until they leave that house, but it's in front of their house. And I'm happy that they can't put it in my driveway because that would be a problem for me, for when anybody else comes to visit. So for that, I could really relate to the definition that they gave because it was something that I never really thought about, but because like that's something that I can apply to myself, it really, really makes sense. But just outside of that in general, I think for me, it's just being able to own the things that I like, own the things that I don't like. I think I've actually done a good job reading this book. There were things that I realized that I've actually done a good job of like having those boundaries, and with the different chapters in it, it did stem from like childhood. The people who raised me really gave me that independence that I could be able to see. So outside of like their definition, I really think it's just a way, to be yourself, to really own who you are, and then to let other people see how they can fit into that. Sometimes you want to just fit into other people's worlds, but I think I've done a pretty good job of if they don't go with it, it makes me sad, but at the end of the day, I kind of will be sad, but I'll get over it. So it's been a good thing for me to kind of see that it applies in different parts of my life. And reading the book, it tells me that there's stuff I need to work on, but I've done an okay job, in setting boundaries so far.
Yeah, I agree with Nora. That definition in the book really makes sense, right? To me, I had a boundary problem. I really did. And I could not understand it because for someone who's very outspoken, I lacked boundaries and I could not understand why. And so it was one of the reasons why I started therapy too. Like, okay. But then I'm learning that boundaries it's the parameters that I put in place where, actually, let me take that back. I'm trying to overthink it. Boundary is a place where I can love you the best that I can, if that makes sense. I'm learning that I want to do the things that I want to do for people in a healthy place. And only boundary can make that possible, right? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I would I will cross my own boundaries or let people cross it and I'll get mad and it affects how you relate to people. And sometimes you're not kind, sometimes you're angry. So to me, that's what boundary is. And it's funny because it's like, oh, boundary helps, keep me what's mine and what's yours. But it works in the opposite way for me, how I see it, in the sense that you have to know yourself to have boundaries. If you don't have a good sense of who you are, the kind of things you like, what upsets you, what makes you happy, you will have a hard time placing boundaries because you wouldn't even know where to draw the line. Even if they gave you the pencil, you wouldn't even know where to put those lines. So, to me, it's just like it works in the opposite way, and then the effect works in the other side. So but yeah, that's how I look at boundaries.
Yeah. Dope. Barbara, in the book, there are tons of examples, again, biblical examples to real life examples, the putting them together, taking them apart, drawing graphs to show the progression, all that stuff. So I guess what I'm asking is, what's the difference from the book, again, if you could cite examples, distinguish between responsibilities and ownership, again, under that umbrella of boundaries?
I think the example that comes to mind, I believe the wrong one, is I don't remember her name, but the lady that was married with kids, and growing up, her parents never told her no. They gave her so much love and attention because in her parents' understanding, if they did that, she was going to, in translation, act right when she grew up. She was going to know she was loved and she was going to do the things that she's supposed to do. However, because her parents did not set those boundaries for her, when she went into her marital home, she was having a lot of problems because she was used to yes. And she used to do the things that she wants to do. And she wasn't thinking that she had somebody else. And it was affecting her marriage, but she couldn't see it. And the main reason was because those boundaries were not set for her as a kid. I don't remember the book if she went to therapy and that's how they got to discover that aspect of it, but that was a good example that they gave. I think to understand like how boundaries pretty much distinguish between responsibility and ownership is, Terence kind of alluded to this earlier, that a lot of the time if you don't know who you are, like individuality, if you don't understand the person who you are, it's very difficult for you to set boundaries sometimes. And I think everybody growing up as a young child has a little bit of that as you're growing up. However, it's like we usually have this bad habit, which I think I do as well. Sherry, thank you, Sherry. The lady's name was Sherry. But we have this bad habit where we take responsibility for other people's feelings and the emotions, and we own it because of which we're going to dive more into as we go. This sense of we feel guilty or don't want to feel bad, and so we will absorb whatever pain or whatever they have going on. And I think what boundaries helps us understand is, yes, that is your feeling, that is your emotion, that is your reaction. That is not my responsibility to control it. It's not my responsibility to manage pretty much however you're reacting. And I think as an individual, I personally tend to suffer from that a lot. I tend to absorb a lot of people's responsibilities for that emotions. And so this book, if anything, did highlight that for me, that I have a lot of work to do in my own personal life. And so when we don't tend to set those clear boundaries in our lives, it's a clear line in the book. It gave perfect examples of a clear line where it leads down to emotional exhaustion. If anything, you just get exhausted in a lot of relationships and a lot of friendships, and none of the person, you or the other person involved in the situation, does not know why, but that just comes from you personally. So
Gotcha. Oh, Mane, do you have any nuggets to drop on that?
Yes. Actually, I have two different stories. I think one is from the book where this couple, they had a son who was quote unquote irresponsible, and then they went to therapy, and the therapist told the parents that your child doesn't have a problem, you do, because they were enabling him. And if the kid doesn't have consequences for his actions, then he doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. Like if he goes broke, you put money in his account instead of telling him to work for money. Or if he's smoking, you give him a boundary. You say, okay, if you're going to stay in my house, then you can do XYZ. So it's sometimes we may be scared of setting boundaries because we think we may lose the person, but we are actually doing the person a disservice. And Bob, when you were sharing the story of, when you were saying that we tend to take on other people's what do you call it, emotions, there is this story that was shared in the group chat where a woman, she's married, she had a child, she brought her mother from, I think, Cameroon to come take care of her child so she could, go to work and school. And then her father-in-law, so the husband's dad was living there too. And then her mom started getting sick, so she took her mom to the hospital and found out that her mom is pregnant and the dad is her father-in-law. So the question in the group chat, or the girl was asking, what should she do? Should she tell her dad that her mom is pregnant for her father-in-law and blah, blah, blah? And my response was, well, I think she was feeling bad. And my response was, you cannot own that. So there are two both consenting adults. They made a choice. That's the consequence. Now, I think she wanted to tell her dad, but her mom was refusing. So my response was, well, just like you find out is pregnancy is 9 months, one or two things would happen. They'll either find out or they won't. And if they don't, it means something happens to the child. So why are you owning that? So that was my response in the group chat was straightforward. Let everybody else find out the way that you found out. If she doesn't want to own up and tell her husband that she's pregnant for her father-in-law, and the response on the chat was laughter, but I got like back thinking like, oh, that was too harsh or blah blah blah, and I'm like, what is she supposed to do? Like, what is she really supposed to do? She didn't bring her mother for that to happen. She brought her mother to help her with her child. So why should she feel responsible for something that she really had no control over? So that's the thing where we feel that, oh, now I gotta feel bad. I mean, yes, you could feel bad to a certain extent, but no amount of feeling bad is gonna change what happened. And there was no way you could stop that from happening. Or maybe you couldn't have brought your mother here, but like I said, you didn't bring her here for that. So what has happened has happened.
That's tough. That's tough. Yikes. I mean, just along those lines of that, that story, anyways, boundaries again, right? We're talking, it comes in many different, forms, and it's important to distinguish, to know the differences, especially when dealing with folks. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. Those are some different forms of boundaries that, we can establish with, our peers or siblings or friends. I guess, T, can you please discuss why it's crucial to recognize these different boundaries within our relationships?
I think the first thing is to not have to, nothing drains you of virtue more than when you don't have boundaries, right? You get to a place they say it's emotional fatigue. Just how you feel it in your body, you carry that in your emotions, in your mind, and it's just like this dark cloud or wet blanket just thrown over you, right? Because you are bearing the consequences that should have gone to other people. You're carrying that with you. And so if for nothing else sake, just for you to have room to fully be yourself, that's one of the most important, to me, like that's one of the most important benefits of having boundaries emotionally, right? It's just to be able for you to create more room to just fully be yourself.
That's my main point. Yeah. Nora. Nora, what do you think to that same question about,
I think the book gave us a lot of like examples of, like Therese said, you can't be yourself if you don't set the boundaries. And the biblical, the biblical examples, that they were able to relate it to help, spiritual, religious people to really understand that if you're always thinking that God wants you to to be selfless without actually setting biblical boundaries, that's a lie. I really love that aspect, because on one of the it was like law number 9 here, the law of activity. There's something that they wrote. It says God will match our effort, but He will never do our work for us. And that's a good example. You know, everybody can come up with the reasons why things aren't working between friendships, but it's always up to you to set that boundary. This Sherry girl, you know, in the beginning it talks about her life without the boundaries, and then at the end it talks about her life with the boundaries. At the end of the day, everybody around you is going to try to make you fit the mold that works for them. And it's always going to be about you. You're the one who changes everything. You know, God, you can say amen to the prayers, but if you're not going to be proactive after you say the amen, it doesn't work. So there was also a story here about this couple who his wife was always late. And he was tired of it, you know, and it's like, oh, women are late, they're doing their makeup, X, Y, and Z. It's a good excuse, but it's not okay. So he left her. So I would be really annoyed too that you left me, but if it's really a bad problem, you know, the man had to stand up for himself. You know, you can't just say, oh, you're late, it's frustrating, X, Y, and Z. That man had to make that conscious decision to leave his wife and go to the party by himself. You know, when they came back, they probably fought. All this stuff happened. But at the end of the day, it's really always up to us to change the people around us. And you have to do things one time. It's going to be uncomfortable. You do things the second time. But as long as you stand your ground, it's going to help you in the end. Because this Sherry girl, she had to make a lot of changes with friendships, with her children. There was also the one about the girl who, I guess her husband would always come in late, so she couldn't feed her kids on time. And she would leave him cold food in the fridge. It's like, oh, people will be like, you're not respecting your husband. How dare you, you know, leave him cold food. He's your king. You're supposed to do wife, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but you have children and you want them to go to sleep on time. So it maybe look disrespectful to some people, but at the end of the day, this man is not helping the family unit. So it was up to her to really make that bold move. And after that, he learned from it. So I really love the biblical aspect. Like, God wants us to be patient and kind and loving, but at the end of the day, it has to come from a place of love. You can't just always be doing stuff and then fussing about it. We have to make the change. So I really think that was like one of the things that I really like. The book pushed all those things in a really good way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to add to what you mentioned there, I think somewhere in the book too, you know, just to talk about the different boundaries. Well, the one that really stood out for me really was the church one, where the lady, she couldn't tell what type of friends she got. Everybody was a friend in this, a friend in that, and the dude was like, wait, are you saying the people in church are your friends? Because, I mean, I forget what it is, but to me,
it was just the ministries that she was a part of. Yeah.
So, and fast forward today, you have all these folks that always say, oh, this is my friend, this is my friend, we met in church. I'm like, wait, so are you guys like friend in Christ, or are you guys like friends? Because there's a big difference, you know what I mean? Like, you cannot see your friend in Christ and expect them to understand everything that you go through on the non-church side, you know what I mean? Because you don't show that side to them. So how do you expect them to understand you from that perspective of things? So again, it was just, you know, again, call of action. I don't know how to say it. Call of action, call of whatever. Anyways, was that moment where you go, this is what I've been trying to tell people, but they don't get it. But yeah, this guy got it. So moving forward.
AK, can I add something to that?
Sure.
On the spiritual side of things, I think for me, generally, especially in the church, we have this issue with Christians where we have this, it's more like a self thing. I think we think we're selfish if we do not, they use that as an example a lot. A lot of Christians will say, oh, that's selfish if they say no to something. That's a mindset that they have. Oh, but the Bible said you should not think about yourself, you should think about other people. And with the many examples that he gave, I think the best conclusion that I got from them was, he said something that one thing we don't realize is that setting boundaries is not a selfish thing, especially he was speaking to the Christians. I was like, if this man could say this out loud, so every Christian, especially from Africa, can hear that. Setting boundaries is not selfish. However, it's more like a form of stewardship to the life, with the life that God has given you. Because if you don't have those boundaries, the things that God has set for you to do, you won't do them. Because if anything, if you say, oh, if somebody asks you to do, there was an example that I don't know if it was a choir minister, that when they ask him something, he'll say yes, but he grumbles. And they'll say to you to do something, you grumble. So if you don't have those boundaries with yourself, that's you're not doing following what the Bible is telling you. Because if I come and say, for example, Therese asked me to do something, instead of saying no, or as I wrote F no, I will say yes. But I'm saying half-heartedly, and I'm doing it and I'm grumbling. I'm not in full spirit. The blessing that I'm expected to get from that service is not going to come to me, because God says if you want to do something, you do it with your whole heart. But I'm doing it with anger, and I have anger, and I build this resentment towards Therese. Eventually, Therese will feel that, right? But I don't see it. And so, if anything, it was perfect. I'm like, oh, this, like, it resonated so much with me. Setting boundaries as a Christian is not you being selfish. It's actually you're following the will of God. You have to set it, I guess, to live the godly way, if anything. I don't know if that's a quick conclusion, but yes, I just wanted to add that part.
Yeah. You can set boundaries to your doctors too. If you like, don't.
Don't do that, please. Don't. Don't do that. That's
just along those lines, right, Barbara? And this question is coming to you again, just along those lines. I remember earlier during the recording, you mentioned, having to did you say not inadequate, boundary settings, or you fall short in, when you set your boundaries, you fall short in them. But can you give examples, maybe not from the book, but from your own real life experience, on a time when you fell short in your boundary settings, I said
yes.
that, but then you fell short, and then money you can take the next one.
So I did set my family is very, I'm heavy on that, but my dad and I are very super close, and sometimes I don't want to say my dad is needy, but he has this mindset that I have to tell him everywhere I go. If I travel out of the country, he gets pissed off because I never tell him. So I did set a boundary, right? I said I was going to do it. I told him that no matter on this circumstance, I will not tell you where I'm going. It's my right. He goes, we'll go. It was an argument. Like it happened recently, going back and forth. He said it was his right. I said it was not his right. He said it's his birthright. He's my father. He's supposed to know. I'm like, I'm an adult. You understand? So I'm not going to tell you. However, that was a boundary I set for myself, but I fell short because I caved in. It's not like because now, see, this is something I'm doing also the same, which I'm not doing the book. I'm blaming him for my reaction. I fell short of it because I did not stick to my boundaries. Because I felt he felt bad, and then in my head I started this overthinking process that, well, he has a right to know, and blah 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 blah, and I caved in. He wanted me to, if anything, to apologize because I traveled without telling him, and I could have gotten into danger. And it was like a whole debacle. It was just back and forth, back and forth. He goes, oh, he tells me everywhere he goes, which he does. I don't ask for it, but he does. He will tell me everywhere he goes. So he expects the same thing, right? That's him. To me, that's him transferring his emotions or everything on me. And I'm like, that's not my responsibility to hold. He said, but I do tell you just so you know. So why can't you do the same? I said I wasn't going to tell him, but because I felt bad, I caved in, and I apologized for traveling. Oh, I apologized for traveling. And this is my big age, without telling my father that I was traveling. And I did tell him the next time I was going somewhere else. So that, like, it just, when they say give an example, that was a perfect example. And it's like when they're reading that part of the book, because they're talking to me, I set a boundary, and then I dropped to the bottom of it. But I'm learning. as we go more and more, because I'm setting more and I'm keeping them, and it's working so far. So fingers crossed. But that was just a perfect example because it happened recently. There's so many, but yeah.
Well, just remember that this is your big age. You can be kidnapped too. Anyways.
Wow.
The play.
Then you say what happened was.
Yeah. Oh, anyways.
What was the question?
The question was, what was the question again? What examples of boundaries in your own life, or from the book, if you remember any?
Well, before I answer that question, because I'm sitting here, I'm staring at this Michelle Obama's book. When I think it's not when you mentioned the story of the wife who left the husband's food to get cold, it reminded me of a part in Michelle Obama's book of Becoming, where there were times when she wanted so bad for Barack Obama to be home for dinner and to tuck the kids into bed and all of that. And every night she'll get frustrated because he won't come home on time. And even when he said that, he was on his way, he was really not on his way. Or so too many nights she went to bed frustrated. And then when she got to therapy, her therapist said, which one is more important? If you've communicated to your husband that this is important to you, and for whatever reason he can't keep to it, and you really want your kids in bed at a certain bedtime, then you have to figure out which one is important and then go with it. And if your husband wants to be part of that family night routine, then he's going to fix it. And for whatever reason, that particular part, amongst many things in the book, stuck with me. And that's how I've come to learn that the statement of you teach people how to treat you, and you don't have to be aggressive about it. If it's something that you really want, that you really desire, you can communicate it in a loving way. And if they want to meet you, they're fine. If they don't, then you can move on. So for me personally, I think that I tend to be very more logical than emotional. And sometimes it could work against me, because in this book, I think there was a part where he said boundaries are supposed to be flexible. They're not supposed to be a wall. And that's what I struggle with. If I don't like something, I would say maybe, how many years ago? About 5 years ago? For me, it was either my way or no way at all. Like if something doesn't go my way, I will not try to see where you're coming from. I'll just be like, okay, we're just going to have to agree to disagree and then move on. But I'm learning to hear the other perspective and still stick to, since we're talking about boundaries, I will hear your perspective, but I will stick to the boundary. And I will explain, because before I'm not the explaining person. I'm just like, this is what I want and that's it. So a specific example, maybe I could use my my career choice, becoming an occupational therapy, family-wise. I did not explain why I wanted to become an occupational therapist until maybe post-pandemic, because it wasn't something I could explain. It wasn't a choice that I just woke up and decided I wanted it. I felt like it was something quote unquote spiritual. And then, but it's only making sense years later. I did not explain that, I found out through my youngest brother who has a disability, and there was some kind of a connection to me that I could not put into words. And I think that's probably where for those, how many years, I was just like, okay, if you don't like this idea of mine, then I really don't care about you. But yeah, there are many other examples, but I think that is one example that it was more of a wall than the flexibility of what boundaries are really supposed to be. I don't know if that answered that question.
Sure do, even beyond self. But yeah, thanks for that breakdown. It has something to say. Cross my mind. Anyways, I'll get back to you if I remember. But Nora, can you please discuss internal challenges like guilt or fear, and external challenges like pushbacks, from others? And this is in regards to, common challenges people face while, setting boundaries.
This is also just from my, just my personal experiences. Like, my mom is the last born out of 8, 9, 10 children from my grandparents. So between me moving to America and living in Cameroon, like she had older siblings that took care of me and my sister at one point or the other. And so there's always this like shadow that, oh, when you were younger, I took care of you. So even it feels sometimes like they still think that we are those young children, even in our big age. And they always want to know everything that's going on in your life. Even though sometimes you're still working through it, so you don't want to talk about it with everyone, or you are still just trying to figure it out as an adult. So there have been times with my family members, my aunts, that things have been going on in my life that I waited 1, 2, 3 years to tell them about, and it was like a whole family meeting thing. It was like a whole family meeting because they expect that, because they did this X, Y, and Z years ago, that you still owe them that respect. And at the end of the day, because my mom is the last born, like there's just this, she's for them always still going to be their little sister, and we're always going to be the children. So I think that is like a really hard boundary to set, because as an adult, you're really trying to figure things out for yourself. But there's always this thing where, oh, tell your auntie, greet your auntie, call your auntie. Have you told your auntie this? That they heard this from somewhere and they're upset because you didn't tell. Like, that is in my life, that has been really the perfect example of just a hurdle that I've had. And sometimes you just suck it up and go and apologize. But there are other times that I really am like, no, this is my right. Like, I'm not even done figuring this out yet. So I'm not about to let you come in and tell me that you should have known from the jump. So I think that's like a really good example of just some of the challenges of boundaries and how they can really just overtake your life, even when you're really trying to be strong. And what Barbara said about her and her dad is it's really funny, because in the book it talks about like origins, of where lack of boundaries come from. And it talks about the families who are really, really close together. They grew up, they're like each other's best friends. They're each other's best friends. But then when it's time to separate, it becomes a problem. And you don't really understand, like, why is separation a problem, even though we're each other's best friends? We should be okay. But so you don't really think that having a close relationship with your family could be too close sometimes. And that's also, nobody thinks like, oh, I need to make this boundary. We can't just be buddy anymore. There has to be some limits that you set. So I think that was like a good example, and it was really funny to see, because there's like a lot of instances in the book where they said like, oh, they were great, but when you decide to move to another town or something like that, they start to get sad or different things like that. You never think that being too close is going to be a bad thing, until you try to make a life for yourself. That isolation that you sometimes want and crave, it becomes a challenge. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. That was perfect segue. Therese, be ready. Let me throw out a whole group, right? So what Nora just mentioned, it's tough, because I had that, right? Not until my mom said, "Don't worry, just don't worry. Very soon you have your own." Then I'll ask you the same question, right? So now I'm sitting, come have my own now, and just to even sit and think of certain things, I'm like, dang, yeah, I can kind of see where this lady is coming from, right? So with that, with that in mind, Therese, how can one overcome internal and external resistance to establishing boundaries?
I think to me the first thing would be consistency, right? You have to constantly draw the line in the sand, because as time goes on, some lines get blurred. Sometimes you cross the line, you lower for people, but having to constantly reinforce those boundaries, I think first of all helps keep them up, right? And then there was something else. I think Manny talked about, like, that your boundaries have to be flexible, right? To me, like, flexibility in the sense, not that he says, oh, this is when it comes to relationships, I don't tolerate lying. And then somebody comes and sweet talks you, and you're like, okay, you know what? Maybe if it's a white lie, that should be okay, right? That's not the kind of flexibility it's talking about, right? It's reevaluating where you're at. Maybe sometimes in life you have not learned certain skills, right? And then you need a boundary in place until you can easily handle that. Then you go ahead and you can move that goalpost further. And so having to constantly evaluate where you're at, the reasons why you have those boundaries in the first place, and then you readjust, right? Something that, boundary in every aspect will not always look the same as when you were 25 and when you're 40, right? Life comes in, you come and you get married, you have to readjust that. You get kids, you have to readjust that. And so I think just that constantly working on it is the one way that you can avoid all that internal struggle, right? Because if you're not actively working on it, yeah, there's no way you're going to make it. You just are not going to make it. And the other thing too, I think your boundaries should be firm, in that if you can always move the line for somebody, it's not a boundary, it's a preference at this point. And so don't confuse that for having your boundaries are firm. It doesn't matter who it is, nobody's crossing that line. If there's somebody who can penetrate that periphery, that's not a boundary, that's a preference.
Man, I was just about to say, man, because you were talking about that flexibility right now, I'm going and go. I was just about to, and then now that I came back full circle and made that statement, thank you, because if my boundaries are not as strong as the rails, roller coaster, a roller coaster going in the air. What holds a roller coaster in the air like that? If my boundaries are not that strong, it's not a boundary.
No, it has to be. That's why I clarify exactly what flexibility in boundaries is, right? It's not per person. It's like, okay, you evaluate where you're at, and then just like everything else in life, it's not set in stone, but it kind of is.
Yeah, Mane. Oh no, sorry, Barbara. Since you mentioned, your dad thing, what are some common challenges people face while establishing boundaries? Wait, was it that one you spoke on? Yeah, it was that one. Yep.
If anything, I think resistance isn't that like one of the biggest things when you're trying to set boundaries, and it's just like, why are you setting them? You are XYZ. And I think for me specifically with boundaries, it's just, I don't want to say the fear of the resistance from other people, but it's just the resistance you get. And this comes from friends, from family, from co-workers, from whomever you come across with. If you do set boundaries, the other person is not going to like it. It's going to be, they will start, it's like a whole like spiral of things, from guilt messages to blaming you for these, and these guilt messages, especially with families, is heavy, very, very heavy. African parents, oh, my mom is very specific with that. They will guilt trip you into anything. And they gave this perfect example of this son that called his mom to check up on him. And the first thing she said was, oh, you couldn't tell by my voice that there was something wrong. I say, if that is not my mother on a day-to-day basis. In fact, that was her this morning. They will guilt you into doing everything. And so it's just a resistance that comes with it. And I think the biggest thing is that resistance, right? The book says something very interesting, that the resistance is a natural cause of you setting boundaries. If you don't get resistance, you're not doing the right thing. If you get resistance from setting boundaries, then you're on the right path. But the problem with us is that if we're not assertive in setting those boundaries, there's something not wrong from your end. And again, I mentioned that earlier. It's something that I have to, with certain people, I have to be assertive in my communication to them and setting those boundaries. Because those guilt trips, those guilt messages, I fall for it 100%. I'm not even gonna lie. I fall for them 100%. I'm a sucker for it. I'm just like, okay, all right, let's go. What's going on? That's me. So I think that is one of the challenges for me specifically. It's just the resistance to the fact, and that resistance, it comes like it starts from the guilt messages or the emotional. I don't want to say emotional blackmail, but it technically is emotional manipulation. It's that they manipulate you into changing.
That's exactly what it is.
Yes, it is. They do it. It sometimes is not intentional, I guess, but it's anything. It affects me because I'm not I get that's something that I struggle with. It's something that I have to work on. It's something that the book pointed out to me, because I'm not assertive in those boundaries. I'm not assertive in that communication. I'm not assertive in doing that. It's making me fall back. So
how would you be assertive when you say all of that in the same sentence and you go, oh, maybe they're not doing it intentionally?
That's the thing. You see that right there? Yes, right there. That was just a perfect example that in fact, as I said, this book, they were talking to me half of the times because I'm suffering with those issues. So
maybe you're not suffering from it. Maybe you're just a sucker for it.
Listen, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm picking little things. But I think for me, just with boundaries, especially with specific people, family, I need to learn to be assertive with just my no is my no. Whether you jump up and down, left and right, is not going to change. The thing is that at work, that's the thing I cannot do. At work, they will tell you, if I set that boundary, I don't care whether you do, whether you go up, like, it's not moving. No, that sounds like a you and a you problem. I will tell you straight up. But in my personal life, I don't apply the same rules. I just don't apply the same rules.
Because it's a different game.
True that.
You're taking the game from a different place to come and put it somewhere. You're not emotionally invested at work. You are with family and friends. So you do need a different set of rules to play that game. And I want to disagree with you something when you say that they don't do it intentionally. They do. It's very intentional. You know why? Because they know that if I beg more than 3 times, she will crack. So that's exactly why they do that. And I used to fall for it too, right? But you have to also remember at the end of the day that inherently as humans, everybody is fighting for their benefit. And so if I want to get you to do something, I will push every button that I can to make sure that I get what I want, sometimes at your own expense. Now, where you would have to draw the line, and the book mentions, is hurt and harm, right? They don't intend to harm you, but they will hurt you in that process. And I just don't like when you tell someone, sometimes it's very simple, like, girl, let's go to brunch. I don't want to go to brunch. Please, let's go, and they will talk all this, and no, you're not respecting that person's boundaries. And sometimes you don't have to explain. Like Mane says that she couldn't explain. You don't have to. You don't have to understand. Not everybody. Let me put it that way. Before couples fight, I say, everybody does not deserve an explanation for why something is a boundary for you. You just have to respect it. That's it. And it may not make sense to me, but I should love you enough to respect that line that you've drawn in the sand. It's just that simple. So every time somebody just fell off, I was like, what happened? Every time somebody guilts you, Bob, I want you to look at that situation and say, yeah, this is personal.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny because we have this thing like guys, I don't know if you remember, and just along your example there, last week one of my guys is like, yo, no, the week before I told him, hey man, let's go to the bar. It's like, nah, I gotta study. I'm like, dude, you study all the time, still being a bitch, man, let's go. He looked at me, it's like, first of all, don't call me that. Second of all, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm like, I mean, I still feel like a big one though, but anyway, suit yourself. I mean, I understood that he's not going to go, but just because of how we communicate, right? Like, I just had to push a little bit. I mean, I had really respected it, but just again, like how we communicated, I pushed like just a little bit. So the next week, it's just starts like, yo, let's go to the bar. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not feeling it. It's like, oh, so who's being the bigger BITCH now? I'm like, I'm still I was like, man, come on, man, just one beer, man. I gotta talk to you about something. I'm like, you can talk to me about it right now. It's like, really though? I'm like, dude, you don't gotta talk to me about nothing. So just stay put where you're at, and that's that. So I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's more of just also knowing the person that you're interacting with, right?
Absolutely.
Like, okay, when sometimes when they really say, yo, I really gotta go out, I really, I know, okay, yeah, this person's probably in distress, and needs to just probably let something out, or talk about something, stuff like that. But sometimes too, it's just again knowing, the person they're with. Fast forward to how the boundaries affect relationships with family, friends, colleagues. I feel like we've already touched that, but Nora, if you have anything else to add to that, please go ahead.
Well, I did touch on the family portion. So for me, it was just, it's long-standing family and understanding that sometimes it's okay to be close, but as you grow up, you have to stretch out and find your own identity at the end of the day. And then it's really interesting because they talked about like friendships, how there's the person who feels like they're doing more in the relationship than the other, and how do you really figure out if it's a true friendship or not. And I think when you're younger, you're a teenager, everybody is just trying to fit in. So you're not really even worried about if that person really likes you. You're just trying to find your group and fit in and find somewhere. But as you get older, it is really hard to maintain friendships, especially if people move away, people have kids, people get married, all these things. So I think the fact that they really talked about how you establish boundaries in relationships with your friends, and if you realize that you are the only one who is putting in that effort, to make sure you have a conversation with them. I liked that portion a lot because once again, you're the one who has to make the effort. You're the one who has to have the conversation with them. You're the one who has to make the change and say, I feel like I'm the one who's always calling you. I feel like I'm the one who's always planning things. If you think this is important, I'm going to stop and allow you to do X, Y, and Z. Or I feel like I'm always saying yes and doing this. I'm going to stop And if you feel like this is important. So with the friendships, with everything really, you're always going to be the person who's always going to see that this is the problem. And it might be me, you know? Yeah, I might be the one who needs to back off and let them take the lead. And that can be difficult sometimes. And once again, going back to the origins, you know, they talked about how you're always doing because you feel like if you don't do, you're going to be isolated. You're always doing because if you feel like you stop, they're going to stop loving you. There's always something. There's always something that comes from it. You know, you're planning events. You're doing this because you like, you're supposed to be doing stuff out of love, but you're afraid of losing love if it doesn't happen the right way. So that was a really good idea where they talk about like, why are you doing this? If you don't find the root of the cause, you're never even going to realize why it's happening in the first place. And I think that was a really good thing as far as relationships. There was something that it also talks about feelings, right? There was this couple who I guess her husband was drinking, and they were asking her how she felt about it. I don't really understand how they worded it, but it was something along the lines of I feel like you, I feel like you, I feel like you. And they were like, okay, you're talking about him, but how is it affecting you? And then she finally said, I feel afraid when you drink. So if you're always saying this person is the cause and you're not saying how it's affecting you, then they're really not going to see what the problem is. You know, if you're like, oh, you're doing this, you're doing it bad, you're always nagging that person, why is it annoying you? You know, because when they do this, this is the trigger that it causes you. So I really like that portion, because word choice is also really, really important when you're trying to communicate your boundaries to people and trying to communicate like how things affect you and how they can change. Because if you're just saying, oh, you're always doing this, you're always doing that, well, I'm doing it for my reasons, but if you don't tell me how that's affecting you, I'm not really ever going to understand your mindset. So, yeah.
I was going to add something with, in line with what AK said earlier, and I think you kind of touched on it as well, Nora, but with the friendship, the example of the friendship, there was something that they gave, it was a perfect example that they gave in the book, and they did, I think it was Matthew 20:15, but pretty much the idea was behind when you take time, like AK had asked his friend to come out, and the friend said no. It was just an example. I'm trying to extrapolate in the point I'm trying to make, but and then he the way he spoke to him, right? Some other people would do that to make you feel guilty. We kind of touched on this earlier. However, it was saying that you do not have to feel guilty for taking time off to spend with yourself, because I think self-care, if anything, self-love is very important with setting boundaries. You need to understand that setting boundaries is a form of self-care, of self-love. But they give, there's this parable, the parable of the workers of the vineyard. I completely forgot it. Matthew chapter 20. And the reference that they used was 20:15, that the landowner asked them that, do I not have the right to do what I want to do with my own money? But the entire parable, like I never understood that parable that way. I never looked at it that way as setting boundaries. I always saw that parable as a way of God rewarding people, and that God is going to reward people how he wants to reward people, and it's not according to what man wants. Because you want God to reward you this kind of way, he's not going to reward it. But that particular verse 15, literally was like set on talking about boundaries, which I thought was very interesting, because the landowner asked the worker that was complaining that he was there at 6 and the one that came at 5 had the same pay, like, are you going to tell me what to do with my money? I can do with my money how I please. And that was like setting boundaries. And I was like, well, okay then. I never seen that particular passage in the book that way. We so focus when we look at it in scriptures and in you're learning like sermons and anything, you talk about rewarding and God rewarding people, but never the fact that actually the Bible does teach you to set boundaries. Because him telling that man that I can do my money however I please to, it's him setting a boundary for himself that you're not going to dictate what I can do with my money. I'm going to do it however I want to do. I understand how you feel, and I respect it, but that's a boundary. I said I'm not going to cross it. So I just thought that was something quite interesting and different.
Yeah. It's very important to set, boundaries, because one thing that can also prevent too is, abuse, and that would lead to healthy relationships. So I guess in conclusion, right, as we wind down the recording here, if we could all please discuss, how boundaries again has helped us this far in our 62 years of ages each, has helped us, that would be great, for the listeners here. So, Mane, with your 62 years of age, you want to tell us how boundaries have helped you?
Boundaries have helped me respect other people's choices, even though I don't understand it. And because that's how I have chosen to see it, there is that expectation that I want people to respect my choices, even though it doesn't make sense to them. And sometimes when I'm in a situation where I feel like my boundary is not respected, like I said, I wasn't always the one to explain why I do what I do or the choices that I make. See, if I have because I used to be the one who's always giving and always doing. And I really don't know why. But the more I read, the more I've learned is that, well, I don't know if I've interpreted this reading and this learning correctly, but I've gotten to a point where I meet you. If I cannot meet you where you are, I leave you alone. Because sometimes I feel like there's good information out there, there's good resources out there that I want to share, I want you to learn about it, but then it drains me. So rather than maybe having the conversation that, okay, this is what's going on and blah, 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 which I'm still working on the whole explaining thing, I just detach, I just disconnect. So as much as boundaries has helped me, respect, even though I don't understand, it's also helped me to at least try to explain before I detach. Not really explained, but how do I say this?
Negating.
And somebody years ago, I figured out how to explain this.
I did not catch that last thing you said, Money.
A second, somebody else answered the question from their perspective, why I figure out how to explain this whole boundary thing from what I've learned perspective.
I guess I can go. Shoot, my God. Something that's said that was mentioned in the book, like you're always the person. If you're always the person doing, that was me, right? Always doing, always being present, always the shoulder to cry on, don't matter what's happening. Always wanting to be involved. And now this is something that I'd say, well, I'll link it because there's also spiritual boundaries, right? So I'll just say this. It's something that I would say that God is dealing with me on. Is and one day it was clear that it was like I need to be delivered from the need to know. That breeds entitlement that we don't see, and you feel like you're privy to a lot of things that you're not, right? And that's something that I'm learning. Hey, I'm here if you ever want to come and tell me what's going on, good and well, but I realize you tend to do all these things so you can stay involved, so you can stay known. That's people please, right? And that's not healthy, because at the end of the day, instead of doing things out of love, you're doing it out of obsession. And hate is not the opposite of love. Obsession is, because love doesn't hold on too tight. Obsession does. And so if you're obsessed on people, you are doing every and anything that you can to hang on to those relationships. And I had to put boundaries for myself to say, okay, well, first things first, it's not your responsibility to remember every person's birthday. That was a big one for me. It's not your responsibility to make sure that everybody gets a gift on something. I was doing it because then you realize I had this thing where it was a friend of mine. I mean, I knew what it was, but a friend of mine, we were having a conversation, and he said this to me. He said, Therese, you're very accommodating. And that shook me to the core. I was like, wow, it is true. Because like you said, Manny, if I'm not willing to meet you where you are, right, I leave you alone, right? But no, not me. I will build that bridge. I will fly an helicopter and get you to where that was me. Always doing like you cannot be in my vicinity and you're in need or you're suffering in something. I would send you the SWAT team. But then what that did for me that I come to realize is I don't give people the opportunity to show me who they are or what they are made of, because I am always making up for what's lacking. That's a big lack of boundary problems, right? You have to let people, give them that opportunity to fail you, and then oh, okay, when it comes to these things, I cannot count on this person, and that is okay. That's the other side of boundary. That if this person cannot meet my needs, that should be okay. The results of boundaries should not be the complete opposite of why you're setting that boundary. For example, you have your heart broken. Now you have to be careful of the kind of men you're dating. You watch out, you do your due diligence. That's what boundary does, right? As opposed to like, oh, I will never love another man on this planet again. That's no boundary. You missed the whole point. That's not what a boundary comes to do, right? To take it away. And so because of that, it's helping me. I really am investigating. I don't care if it is the smallest thing, even if it's a call to check up on a person. I sit down and I ask myself, what is my motive? Why am I doing this? Am I genuinely just trying to check on Nora, or I just want to check a box? And if it's not, if I search and it's not coming from a place of love, I would not do it. And there are times I will go days that I've not reached out to someone and I want to do it so badly, but I'm like, it's not coming from a good place. And that's how I want to hopefully can live my life going forward, using boundaries to be able to think and say everything, no matter how small. It's not because I'm wanting to, let them not kick me out the book club. So let me do, like, it's coming from a place of love that I can do. I don't want to sow poisonous seeds.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess I can.
Don't poison nobody. I said don't poison nobody.
No, that's not the plan.
I go ahead, buddy.
Oh, see, now I lost my train of thought. What was I gonna pick up on? Okay, so yeah, so I used to be the one to jump hoops. I could be somewhere and just overhear a conversation about somebody I know has a hard time with something, and in my head I'm already figuring out how I can help them. So that was me what year was this? 2011? No, because in grad school it really hit me hard in grad school because I went to grad school out of state. I was the only one in that state, and I had this thought that the friendships that I had worked on and built back in Maryland, I dropped in during school breaks, and they'd be like, oh, she's in town, and go see her. So I had to, and a lot of the things I learned for myself, I learned through books. So I had to learn to do things because I wanted to and because I could, and not because I was expecting something out of it. So I'm not checking on you because I'm expecting that you would check on me. I do it because, oh, you crossed my mind. I haven't seen you in a while. I haven't heard from you. And which is one of the reasons why I deactivated my WhatsApp double blue check mark thing. Even though the whole world thinks that people will do that are suspicious or hiding something. I did that because there was a friend that I had been checking on. She would not reply. But I'm with a group of other mutual friends. And they're like, oh, so and so. I'm chatting with so and so. And they're like, and I'm looking at my phone like, I can see you online. It's been 3 days. You know, on the assumption that you were busy, you work nights, you got to work, you're sleeping, and all of that. So it was one too many of those. And I got tired of wondering why no reply, or so it got to a point where I said, okay, if I deactivate this, I would not care to know whether you send the message or not. I was just sending it because you were on my mind and I was just checking you. So it's really like, okay, I've checked on you. Whatever you do with that message is up to you. So it was a way of freeing myself from myself, right? So I had to set that boundary. And another thing I've learned about boundaries is you're really setting the boundary for yourself. I mean, you're setting a boundary for how you would like to be treated, and you're treating yourself the way that you would like others to treat you. So, yeah, boundaries help me, I don't know if to say let go of expectations, but it's doing things genuinely out of the fact that you want to do them. And not so much. I mean, it would be good if these things are returned. But another thing I have learned is that in your greatest time of need, the people who show up for you are not necessarily the people that you showed up for, but simply for the fact that you showed up for somebody, So your reward is not from those that you did things for, which is what I have learned through life experiences. So that's why I'm like, okay, I'm sowing this seed into the universe. It is a good seed. It will grow and the fruits will come to me from maybe the people I sowed the seed to, or not at all. But yeah, eventually it comes back to me.
We are, it's a liar. We are all humans, At some point in time, you're going to feel some type of way, and then only Satan knows what he can manifest in that, in that moment. That's if you're not strong in your faith, but again, that faith will be tested. I tested again on that tested, whichever. Voila.
That's like tested. Okay. Shoot.
But no, in all reality though, you do make a great point there. There's something about expectations, within friendships and relationships. If somebody said they're not ever expecting anything, okay. All right. Like I said, you'll be tested. But
wait, to add to that though, what was I gonna say? It's okay to have the expectation, but to hold on so rigidly to it can hurt you more.
As that obsession.
Yeah, so yes, because expectation is also a boundary. It's like you will not treat me as you won't talk to me a certain way, and that's an expectation. I expect to be treated with respect. That's an expectation, that's a boundary. But if somebody doesn't do that for you, rather than stay there and wait for them to do it, you can be like, okay, this is not working for me, so adapt it. Especially if you've expressed that, this way that you're talking to me, that you're treating me, is not working for me. And they don't change, and they've made a choice, so it's left for you to make a choice.
Right. Yeah. True that. Some people need to learn to take. Take it. This is not a question thing. It's a takeover. At the end of the day, you're the one when you go to lay your head on your pillow, not John or Nde or loom is coming and holding your head and putting the pillow for you. No, you are the one who's putting it on there by yourself. So you have to take it, own it. But anyway, sorry, I digress. Who did not give code? Barbara, please give your conclusion.
So you guys were talking, right? I think it was, I don't remember when, but 2 instances, and somebody made a comment to me. Listen, I think it was a compliment. So a friend of mine said they were having a conversation. I was not in this group, and something was happened to somebody else, right? And I had this habit right I offered. I said I was going to take care of it. And then this other friend was saying that, oh yes, this another mutual friend and acquaintance said, Barbie, that I am one of those people that you and I can fight and argue and I hate you, but if I see that you're in need of something, I'll help you. And what she was saying I was going to do, I actually did it. And in my head, just like, oh, that was nice. I'm like, that's not a compliment. That is not a compliment. Another friend of mine has said something that complained that I'm this way. He said, but you're doing the Lord's work now. So that's okay. You're doing the Lord's work. I said, that's not a compliment. And then recently, somebody said again that you look like, it's a compliment. I don't know this person, just said, oh, you look like somebody that you give a lot of people the benefit of the doubt, like you look very kind of that. I'm like, to you, that's a compliment, but to me, I'm like, that's not a compliment. It's not. So when I said in this entire, I said, there's a prayer. I said, I'm going to go biblical a little bit. Psalm 139, 22 to 23. When I tell you, I started saying that phrase every day. I'm like, God, you need to search me. Because if there's anything, if I'm checking on somebody and there's any form of deception in there, if there's I need you to remove it. Plug it out of me. Because it's like I can clearly see with myself that, because I don't know if I have a loving nature, I don't know how to describe that of myself. But I lack boundaries. Like I struggle with it. There's like in my work environment, which you gave like a perfect definition of me, that I'm dealing with 2 different groups of people. I'm very assertive in applying those laws, but in my personal life, I lack those boundaries. I don't know. They effectively telling people my no is gonna stay with no, and having people respect it without me folding is a big issue for me, which is something that I have to work. And this book, if anything, it did shine the light in that area, because it's something that if I knew that internally, it's something that I think I was battling with internally, but I just didn't want to agree. But when I was reading the examples and I kept saying in my head, oh my God, that's very, I do that a lot. At the end of the book, I say, I got issues.
Hey. But Babs, so Babs, you know that why it's better at work, right? It's because work, the essence of work is boundaries and guidelines. Yeah. Everybody comes in, you already know what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. And we don't have that in families, right? And sometimes families, or I'll say that our parents, they feel in that they're trying to raise you for your family. You're raising children for the world, right? You're not raising them to keep them in a bubble. They will go out there and somebody will tell them no, and your daughter will crumble and she will die because a man woke up and told her one day no, right? That's how we raise entitled women. That's how we raise mama's boys. Like sometimes, and this might be a stretch, but I don't think it is, where you meet a girl and she said, my daddy never told me no. Or your daddy did you a huge disservice. Because you are walking, you're walking around the world entitled to a yes that nobody owes you. And you start having all these problems with people. You come to school, people say no, you are distraught, and you have all this. But you walk into a workplace, nobody has that problem at work. You don't see people strolling into work with a cigarette in hand. because it's already there. Ain't nobody coming to argue with your boss. Why is my lunch break only 30 minutes or an hour? You don't see nobody. But why are you trying to come over here and argue with me when I tell you that I'm not going to tolerate you not respecting my time? So why you think you can come over here and play like that? You don't go to late. You don't go to work late, but you about to make me wait for you an hour every time we have to meet. No, you got the wrong one.
I once asked, that same line that somebody said that, oh, my daddy this and that. I'm sorry, but as are you fucking your daddy? Are you having sex with your daddy? Sorry, that makes sense. To me, it's a very fair question. Because
even if you're having sex with the person, will they tell you yes all the time?
I was just saying, because
that was a quick way to shut that down, huh? Yeah, and they mask it now as, oh, it's princess, like you are raising a princess. Like you see these girls that grow up in, like, I'll use women for example because I don't know much about the men experience. You see these girls that grew up in only girls in the house, and they worship, and it's beautiful, I get it, but you're doing this person a disservice because they don't there's no accountability, no ownership, no responsibility. And you be like, I never know how to do this. That's not a flex. It really is not.
Not in this damn time.
No, yeah, it really is not. Like, I wouldn't. Okay, good for you.
But you know what? If anything, sorry, okay.
Go ahead.
Quite sure. I think, if anything, one thing that the book taught me is it's very, as individuals was growing up, you setting those boundaries and sticking with it takes you a long way. It takes you a long way.
Don't forget my joke. Barbara. You're talking about somebody saying you're asking you if you did what? If you are very what? What was the word you used? You said somebody asked you about if you were something.
Right.
Was it kind? Something, I don't know. That was the word you used.
Doing the Lord's work.
It's hold on.
It's something along those lines.
Give the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah, give benefit of the doubt, all those different things. I mean, why would they not ask? Look at where your glasses is sitting on your nose. You're not still giving that glasses benefit of the doubt. Look away. Everybody's glasses is here. Yours is down here. It's taking so much. Maybe sorry.
No, I don't blame you. You see that? Because he said he froze. Let's just be clear about that. That's what the universe doesn't like it. You froze because of that receipt.
Hey, everybody give that conclusion. Nora, did I miss you?
Nora hasn't concluded.
I think mine is pretty much a combination of what Therese said about obsession and Mane with switching off her notifications. The one thing that I've been able to do, I realized as I grew up that I have a bit of a compulsive, obsessive nature about stuff. So if things are affecting me, text messages are probably the prime example that I would give. Like if I'm texting somebody, or I've had to do it, I had a group chat with some friends, or something happened, and then to just stop myself from going to read these messages over and over and over again, I would just delete the whole thread. And that's something that I've had to do on multiple occasions, because knowing myself, I will read it and then I will think about it, and then I will try to get every angle of what might have happened. So that is something that I could really get obsessive over. And I was like, in order to even stop, because even after I deleted, I'm like, dang, what did they say? But at that point, I've at least helped myself in the sense that I can't go back. So that, I think, is something that I've been able to identify, that you're gonna obsess over this, and my way of fixing it is just let's get rid of it in its entirety. So there's definitely a lot of things to still improve on and work on, but bit by bit we're finding ways to kind of set those boundaries to just improve mental health. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, man, I'm a big component of setting boundaries, man. Well, I don't know if I even do. I take it day by day. You know what I mean? It changes. It's like I don't have one. I wake up during the day and I say, okay, what's happening right now? This is what's happening. What do my boundaries tell me?
You are talking to your boundaries, though your boundaries talking to you.
Pretty much. And then I'm like, hey, what are we doing here? All right, cool, that's what we do. Yeah. And then go with it. You know what I mean? I think that I'm very big on that flexibility aspect of things. I'm very big on that. Well, certain things I'm really not. Like you said, it's just is. But there are others that is like, depending on the person, it's just, But in a nutshell, it's also knowing self. A lot of people annoy me, to be honest. So I try to really stay away from folks the best I can, because it's just good for my own mental. Especially when common sense is not being exercised. You know what I mean? I'll lose my shit. And then, so the minute I start sensing it, I just
exit.
I'll call you back. I'll call you back. Disappear. And then, so.
Let me ask you something on that though before you proceed.
True.
Is that, are you setting a boundary, or are you just avoidant of
avoidant?
No, that one is avoiding. Yeah, that one is avoiding. Is avoiding for sure, because again, I don't avoid every single thing, but there are people that I have to do that because I have to do that because they're too sensitive. You know what I mean? So for me to stand there and actually say what I feel, no, I'd rather walk away. It's healthy for me to walk away than to say how I feel. You know what I mean? So in situations like that, there's actually nothing that will actually ever make me say anything. But I still do appreciate that person. You can look at it as it's not healthy, whichever. I have my own ways of, going back and I'm sorry, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it's just also knowing self and also knowing the other person too. That's if you want to take the time to do that. A lot of people don't, but I don't know. I enjoy getting to know people and what ticks or what does not tick, things like that. So.
Oh, okay. Appreciate you answering that, because I was like.
Yeah. And then in reverse to it's like when I sense, when I sense somebody else's boundary, you know what I mean? I mean, to me, that's the best time of my life, because then I get to do something, that I'm not thinking about. I'm like, yes, finally. Then, I just jump in. Yeah. So I guess that's one of my favorite moments in life, when I have to, work on somebody else's boundary. Wow, this is how people do it, shit like that. But anyways, moving on.
It's a great book, and I wish, more people would listen to it. I mean, it's a long book. I don't know if there are summaries out there, but it will be helpful if. So imagine you are trying to set boundaries with somebody who has no idea what boundaries are. It's like pulling teeth.
See, I disagree with you, Mane. I think everybody knows what a boundary is. Are they willing to accept it? I think that's the question. Everybody. That's why you get in your house and you lock your door.
Okay, let me use the
first example. Why you lock your car when you walk away, because you know what boundary is. If someone bumps into you at the grocery store, you immediately get defensive. They know.
There are different kinds of boundary. I think it was mentioned in the book, right? Like the physical boundary, like people have fences. That's a physical boundary. That's obvious. But what were the other boundaries that he mentioned? Say, for example, the boundary of, being invited to something that you don't want to go. Mm-hmm. Do people understand that you not wanting to go is really you not wanting to go. Because people be like, oh, I'm inviting you to this thing. Why don't you want to go? If people understood that that's a type of boundary, it would
That
not
comes,
be in
yeah,
friendship.
see, that comes down to what Nora said earlier, right? I think it was Nora. I could be wrong. But it's like, see, I have given you the boundary. That part is not my responsibility. It's not my duty to make you understand. My duty is to voice out where the boundary is. Don't make it invisible and expect people will magically know where your boundaries are, right? And also set realistic boundaries. Just don't go doing whatever and thinking this, like, boundaries have to be realistic, right? And so if you have said it, it's not my, and that's how we go around packing on this emotional baggage for people, right? It's not my responsibility to make you understand my boundary. I've told you what it is, act accordingly. You don't have to like it.
Right.
You don't have to understand what it is. Like I said, at the end of the day, you have to love me enough to respect that I said I wasn't going to do this with you today. Love me enough to at least respect that. Now we can understand later what's all this and why sometimes the boundary setting, the root cause of boundaries is not, sometimes it's deep. And I'm not even willing to go there with you like that yet. So respect now, understand later. It's just that simple.
Yeah, man. Respect now, understand later. Take it from T. Sometimes it makes no sense in a moment, because it's like my head is already hot. You know what I mean? In that moment, just understand. Maybe bring it up some other time, you know, if you really don't understand. For right now, just don't give me tea. I don't know why you're forcing tea on me. You know what I mean? For example, like, I don't want, you have coffee right there. Why don't you give me coffee? Why must I drink tea? Did you spike it or something?
Hey, don't say that. I just offered someone tea yesterday at my house and they looked at me like I was crazy. Do you want some tea? It's like, wait, did you say tea? As in, I was like, yeah. Yeah, I just felt like it's a good.
I told them from Britain.
So if you come to my house, I will offer you tea. Just.
Yeah, so anyways, man, appreciate you guys. You know, yeah. In conclusion, we explored how essential it is to set healthy boundaries for our mental health and relationships. We encourage you all to reflect on your own boundaries. Are there areas where you need stronger limits, or you need to set stronger boundaries? If you found today's discussion helpful, we highly recommend reading Boundaries by Dr. Henry Claude and Dr. John Townsend for more insights. Thank you all for joining us on Stuck in the Middle. This is a collab with Palm Wine Central Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe down here, or leave a comment, review, or share with a friend. You know, your exes, your grandma, or your grandpa. You know, great, appreciate it.
Yeah, African fathers.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
The entire community.
Yeah, all of them. If you find this episode and the others, insightful, again, hit that subscribe button for monthly notifications. If you want to join us, let us know individually, or again, leave a comment under this or hit us up on our socials, and we'll be glad to bring you on. Again, I'm one of your hosts, Uncle AK. I'm here with Nora, Mane, Barbara, and T. My co-hostess is you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyways, I appreciate you guys, and we out. Peace.